Welcome to Real Vision.
Hey, Ash, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. It's kind of an interesting story how we met. We met on Clubhouse, started DMing on Twitter, as sometimes happens. We did a Zoom call, and I was just fascinated by the way that you talked about the space, your insights into the technology, your background in the traditional financial space, and how you're thinking about the digital asset revolution as we move forward. So there's a great deal to talk about here, Eric, but let's start out a little bit with your journey into the space.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like most people, Bitcoin was the first entry point. Our journey maybe is a little bit different. My background's in computer science. I feel like a bit of a late bloomer actually to the space compared to maybe some of the other guests that have come on. But I first discovered the Bitcoin white paper when it came out, but I didn't really pay that much attention. I mean, I was in university, I was speed skating, I was running my own landscape construction company. I just had so many things going on that it didn't quite resonate. And then I think fast forward a few years, we heard about, the first purchase with Bitcoin, buying a pizza for an extremely large amount of Bitcoin now today. And I think that was a big trigger for me where I realized, oh, this could actually be used to pay for real goods and services. And I think, sadly, feels like I still didn't quite get it fully until about 2015 when, we had heard about what was happening on the Silk Road in terms of the amount of transaction volume. And I went, whoa, this is basically fulfilled its prophecy of digital currency where, you have people who inherently don't trust each other all over the world that are transacting, whether that's for illicit purposes or not. I think, that's out of the realm of what the technology enabled. And so for me, that was what was most interesting because at the same time, myself and one of my other co-founders at Bidali had built a pretty popular web development framework. And it was, it still is used by 25,000 devs actively around the world, startups to Fortune 100s. And we were trying to hire people for our consulting firm. And not obviously, we want to hire people familiar with the tech. And the challenge there was we found great people all over the world, like Ukraine, Iran, Nigeria, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, everywhere. But in most places, I couldn't actually pay them. Like we tried to pay them we're based in Canada. So trying to pay them out of Canada was a real big problem, especially because, at the time, TransferWise was still pretty new. There just weren't good solutions. And then on top of that, we kind of got exposed to the challenges that people were having with their, lack of trust in government in some of those locations, instability in banking, lack of liquidity in terms of US dollars, and those challenges. And so I went, oh, wait, we could actually, what about this peer-to-peer cash thing, Bitcoin, right? And we could actually put these two together and start paying people with Bitcoin. So we actually tried to do that. And the challenges that we had, I think, Jack Mahlers, who was on previously, hit on some of those challenges where one, the user experience was just too hard or clunky. Even for people that are quite technical, it's just a lot of work for them. On our side, the accounting was a huge pain. Even acquiring the Bitcoin at that time was still a bit of a challenge to do those payments. And then the other thing that we had was that the volatility and lack of liquidity in terms of how you actually spend that Bitcoin in other, to pay for your goods and services, whether that's bills or mortgage or whatever. It was just a real big challenge. So we recognized that Bitcoin, not only was it kind of expensive, even in 2015, it wasn't too bad, but 2017 is really where it started to become not economical as a cash payment mechanism. But those challenges, we were like, well, these are big blockers. But at the same time, we saw what was happening with Ethereum. We saw what was happening in terms of these proposals around stable coins that may be able to remove the volatility aspect, which solves the accounting problem as well as escrow and all these things. And so in 2017, we kind of kept tabs on the space. And it was in 2017 that we, I think really looked at it and said, this stuff is starting to reach maturity and it's probably doable where we should build the technology that enables people to transact with these blockchain networks without needing to know all of the mechanics of how blockchains work, and just be able to realize the benefits of peer-to-peer value transfer. So that's kind of where we got started. And Bidali started in 2018, and we've been running ever since. Raised a little bit of capital. We're doing another round right now and working on some stuff with advising some governments and some other digital currency on their digital currency rollouts and around the world. So
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that your kind of thought process around Bitcoin in 2015 starts with a real world use case rather than a theoretical. You were looking at this and saw the frictions that were in the traditional financial system and saw Bitcoin as an opportunity to solve some of those problems. You mentioned Bidali, your current shop. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
yeah, I mean, I think in that respect, our long-term vision is and always has been to create kind of the world's first user-owned bank and payments network. I mean, even today, with all these, utilizing blockchain tech under the hood and cryptocurrency, I think because why reinvent the wheel? I mean, we already have these peer-to-peer networks that have emerged. It's just the technology themselves is largely still fairly inaccessible without the tooling and handling a bunch of the mechanics around how the networks actually work. Like, how do you manage private keys? How do you actually secure transactions? How do you enable people to recover private keys while straddling this line of being non-custodial? So we've been working on a lot of those aspects to really bring that idea to fruition. And in our perspective, from our perspective, the challenges there, bless you, the challenges there have been, same challenges in terms of liquidity, stability, ease of use. And so the first place that we started was building our own payment system, and recently released our own mobile app so that people it kind of gives you this effect of having a multi-currency bank account in your pocket. But the first step was, how do we provide the infrastructure to enable people to transact on these networks without needing to know all the mechanics and being able to spend at brands that they actually care about? So back in 2017, the challenge was there weren't a lot of payment processors out there that supported anything outside of Bitcoin. And even we knew that Bitcoin wasn't the best transaction medium. And then on top of that, there just weren't a lot of places accepting Bitcoin at the time. It was either you could buy, t-shirts, mustache wax, and hats and stuff, swag, or you could buy yachts and high-end houses, right, through brokers. You were kind of lacking this middle ground. And
Right.
so what we set out to do in 2018 was provide the ability for people to purchase from real brands. And our initial foray into that was actually enabling people to purchase gift cards with digital currency, Bitcoin and other digital assets in a safe and compliant manner so that they can actually convert that value in a cost-effective way as well. And so now that we've done that, we support I think at this point now, it's over 3,000 brands across 150 different countries. And we're starting to work with individual brands on, how do we actually, is one of the things that we recognize is that gift cards and stable coins actually aren't a whole lot different. And that there's some specific mechanics in order to fit within, prepaid stored value law. But in terms of the actual utility, they're not really that different. One's branded currency and the other one is, generic and open. But what if we could combine the two? Because we could actually enable brands to have better visibility into how their business credit of sorts is actually being used, especially on secondary markets, as well as preventing the whole double spend problem, which accounts to about 9-10% in fraud a year in just direct costs, depending on the brand. And then there's also all the indirect costs of, like, if a customer, bought a gift card or was given a gift card that was already spent, now the brand has to deal with reputational risk, compliance costs, customer support costs, and all these things. So that's kind of where we're at today. And, we kind of have two theses around this, is that in order for crypto to kind of be mainstream, you need to provide as good or better experience than traditional banking. I think in some ways that's that bar is quite low, and in other ways that bar is actually pretty high.
Hmm.
You know, in terms of security, the bar is quite high. In terms of maybe customer support, the bar might be a little low, particularly depending on where you are in the world.
Right.
But then the other side is, you know, how do we actually enable people to utilize those services in a way that's actually more accessible for them? Because I think the other challenge is there's a lot of people that are kind of frozen out of the traditional system, and crypto can kind of enable that if it's easy and provide
Right.
some of the same benefits.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.